Good afternoon, Grace Covenant. Welcome to our Friday devotion and a little bit of practice time. Glad you could join me today. I wanted to go back to the very beginning, the very beginning, Genesis. The very first line of Scripture, which I think we could probably all quote, starts this way. In the beginning, God created. In the beginning, God created. Now, I think we can all unpack some form of the creation story and what happened in those 6 days before the seventh day of rest, that God created everything that is. And God created us. In fact, humankind, male and female, were the last thing to be created. And God said it was very good. And the other thing in that narrative is that God said that we will make humankind in God's image. And I reflect on that as I'm practicing. Because if we are truly reflecting the image of God, one of the ways we do that is by creating. That was the very first thing God did. From the tiniest molecule till the most complex creature on the face of the earth, we believe God's hand was in that God's creative genius formed everything that is. And God created us in God's image. So when we create, we are in fact reflecting some of what God is and some of who God is. And I think about that in this pandemic time because as a musician, I'm used to the solitude of practice, but I'm not used to the solitude of playing in an empty space for worship, and it feels a bit foreign to know that some of these virtual services, I'm sitting here playing and there's no collaboration and no singing. There's no corporate creating in this space. And as much as a musician likes to sit and practice and perfect his or her craft, there is that component of sharing it with others, whether it be in a congregation or in a concert hall with an audience. And I've spoken with other musicians who talk about how foreign it feels to sit and play for our congregations when virtually they're not with us. And I have to remind myself that even in the solitude, when I'm creating, I am being part of what God created me to be. And each one of us has some way in which we are creative. Some of us have artistic abilities, playing instruments, painting, sculpting, pottery. But you are creative when you make a meal, when you pick out an outfit, in the simple things of life, when you help your child solve a problem. You're being creative. And I want you to understand and honor that in who you are, and understand that part of that is a reflection of who God has called us to be. And in that same vein, as we are all called to be creative, and being isolated maybe feels different at this point, I am reminded of the hymn that Marcia quoted last week, which I think is a Grace Covenant favorite and gaining popularity among churches over the last few years, and that is the hymn For Everyone Born, A Place at the Table. And there's a line in the refrain that says, God will rejoice when we are creators of justice. When we are creators of justice. I just have to ponder that for a moment and think what that means. We've been called to be creative, and we all have creative abilities in our own way. We are each creating something every day. And during this time of the pandemic, and now in the time of racial tension and all that's going on in our country, what a time to rise up and be a reflection of God's image by creating justice. So if you haven't created anything today, this is your opportunity. Be a creator of justice. Work for justice. There are so many ways to do that. Take a stand for what you know is right, for what God has called us into. Because this is the moment in the life of the church, not just this church, but the church universal. This is our moment to be creators in the fullest sense of the word, not at a keyboard, not at a stovetop, not at an easel, but in our actions, in our words, and in our work, creating justice. So go and be who God created you to be, and create. Care for those around you, love one another, and let us continue to create justice and equality for all people. Continue to stay home if you can. Stay safe, stay connected, and know that you are loved. Thanks be to God.